Dhaka is a city defined by its noise and its traffic. But when you step off the streets and onto the banks of the Buriganga River, you find a completely different kind of chaos. Look at this thick, pitch-black water. Despite the intense pollution, this river is an absolute lifeline. Here at Sadargat Port, dozens of massive, multi-level passenger ships, known as launches, depart every single day. A single launch holds a cross-section of the entire Bangladeshi economy. Down on the open deck, passengers pay a few dollars for a spot on the floor. Up top, in the private cabins, tickets cost nearly 4 times as much. The margin for error is virtually zero. Heavy steel vessels weave around each other, carrying thousands of people, constantly dodging tiny wooden fishing boats. This floating city operates on a massive scale, yet its survival depends entirely on the intense focus of the men locked away in a small cabin at the very top of the ship. Look at how heavily loaded these vessels actually are. Every deck, every walkway, and every inch of railing is packed with thousands of passengers, trusting this ship to get them to their destination safely. Once a launch detaches from the dock and hits full speed, it builds up terrifying momentum. You have thousands of tons of steel and human cargo pushing forcefully down a crowded, unpredictable waterway. Holding the reins of all that mass are men like Captain Anwar Hossain, who has been steering these launches since 1991, and his assistant Muzammel. They navigate using decades of hard-won manual experience. At this scale, a 6-inch miscalculation or a 2-second delay in reversing the engines is enough to tear a hull open, pulling hundreds of people down into the current. You might expect a ship of this size to be packed with automated sensors, modern radar arrays, and digital displays. But inside the bridge, the technology looks more like a 19th century tugboat. The most alarming limitation of the ship is sitting right in front of the captain. There are no direct brakes in the control room. He cannot physically stop the ship himself. Instead, he relies on an old mechanical telegraph. The captain pushes a lever, sending an audio signal deep into the isolated engine room. The crew hears the signal, confirms the order, and throws the gears into reverse. All of this takes precious time. By the time the massive propellers finally start fighting the dark water, the ship has already drifted significantly. Anwar and Muzammel have to anticipate danger and initiate a stop long before the hazard is actually in front of them. To maintain spatial awareness without a high-tech radar to penetrate the fog, the captains rely on an incredibly rudimentary toolkit: their own eyesight, a physical compass filled with water, and Google Maps on a smartphone. When another massive launch approaches from the opposite direction, they establish the right-of-way entirely through sound. They use a strict, manual code of horn blasts to negotiate who goes where. If Captain Anwar wants to pass an oncoming ship on his right, he pulls the horn once. That single blast tells the other vessel to hold right. If he needs to steer left, he sounds the horn twice, signaling he is taking the left channel. For the entire 3-hour journey to Chandpur, this is the routine. It is a relentless, high-stress negotiation where a single missed audio signal or a moment of lost concentration leads directly to disaster. Given the massive liability resting on their shoulders, you have to ask what this level of expertise is actually worth in Bangladesh. The answer is grim. The lead captain earns a base salary of roughly 18,000 taka a month, while his assistant makes about 6,500. Even with food covered, it is barely enough to pay their bills at home. To help them recover between these exhausting daily trips, the shipowners provide them with a dedicated staff room on board, cabin S18. But the captains almost never sleep there. Instead, they find passengers looking for a private cabin and rent out S18 to them directly, pocketing the cash to make up for their low wages. The men entrusted with keeping hundreds of people alive are so squeezed by the economics of the river that they sacrifice their own rest and shelter just to survive. Eventually, the massive launch ship docks at Chandpur. This entire precarious journey happens primarily to transport valuable cargo, like these highly prized hilsa fish, back and forth across the country. For the passengers, the trip is over. But for Anwar and Muzammel, Chandpur is just a brief turnaround point. They will wake up tomorrow, under-rested, and run the exact same gauntlet all over again. Bangladesh's river trade is built on the focus of these captains. Their ability to navigate the dark while exhausted and underpaid is the only force keeping these thousands of lives safe.